The day humanity discovered they were not alone in the universe began with hope and ended in blood. It was a clear morning in July 2157 when the massive alien ships appeared in Earth's orbit. Their sleek, silver hulls reflected sunlight as they positioned themselves above major cities. For 6 hours, they simply hung there, silent and watchful, while Earth's governments scrambled to form a response. The first transmission came at noon. The aliens identified themselves as representatives of the Galactic Council, a coalition of 12 advanced species that governed most of the known galaxy. Their message was diplomatic, expressing interest in peaceful dialogue with the emerging human civilization. World leaders agreed to meet with the Council delegates at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The alien ambassadors were tall, blue-skinned beings who called themselves the Orcs. They spoke perfect English through translation devices and presented gifts of advanced medical technology. "We welcome Earth to the galactic community," said High Delegate Jal, his large eyes blinking slowly as cameras flashed around him. "Your species has great potential." For 3 weeks, talks continued. The aliens shared knowledge about space travel, offered cultural exchange, and proposed trade agreements. Humanity began to dream of the stars, of peaceful expansion beyond their solar system. Earth's first colony on Mars sent a delegation. The small outposts on Europa and Titan prepared welcome messages. No one saw the betrayal coming. On the 23rd day of negotiations, as Earth's diplomats prepared to sign preliminary agreements, the Council's true plan unfolded. Without warning, a second fleet of warships emerged from hyperspace. These vessels were not the elegant diplomatic ships that first arrived. They were weapons platforms, bristling with cannons and missile arrays. The attack began with the Mars colony. 30,000 settlers died in the first hour as orbital bombardment cracked open the habitat domes. Titan and Europa followed, their small research stations vaporized without warning or mercy. On Earth, horrified leaders watched helplessly as their primitive defense systems failed against the alien technology. When they confronted Jal, the ambassador's friendly demeanor vanished. "Earth sits on valuable resources," he explained coldly. "Your position near 3 major trade routes makes this system strategically important. The Council has claimed this territory." Military bases worldwide attempted to fight back. Fighter jets scrambled only to be swatted from the sky like insects. Missile launches were intercepted before they reached the alien ships. Ground-based laser defenses overheated and failed after minimal impact on the invaders' shields. By sunset, Earth's orbital defense platforms had been destroyed. The International Space Station, with its crew of 42 scientists, burned up on re-entry after being deliberately knocked from orbit. "Your species is young and primitive," Jal told the surviving world leaders in an emergency broadcast. "Fighting is pointless. The Council requires your planet's resources and strategic position. You have 30 days to prepare your people for integration into our authority." The Council's terms were simple but brutal. Earth would surrender all space travel capabilities, provide labor for resource extraction, and accept Council governance. In exchange, they would allow humans to continue living in designated areas and provide basic technological benefits. As darkness fell across a shell-shocked planet, the death toll reached millions. Smoke rose from targeted military installations. Hospitals overflowed with the injured. Power grids failed in major cities. In an underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, the remaining leaders of Earth gathered to assess the situation. Their militaries were crippled, their space capabilities destroyed, their populations terrified. General Thomas Hart, commander of what remained of the United Nations Defense Force, spread satellite images on the table showing the devastation. "We cannot win a direct fight," he said grimly, "but we cannot surrender." President Elena Rivera nodded slowly, her face hardened by grief and resolve. "Then we don't fight directly. And we certainly don't surrender." She turned to the room full of desperate leaders. "We make them regret the day they ever found Earth." The world changed in the days following the attack. Public spaces emptied. Cities grew quiet. From orbit, Earth might have appeared to be surrendering to grief and defeat. Nothing could be further from the truth. 24 hours after the attack, President Rivera activated Protocol Nemesis, a contingency plan created decades ago for the possibility of hostile alien contact. The protocol had been considered far-fetched when first developed, hidden in classified files, and mocked by those few who knew of its existence. Now it became humanity's only hope. The first step was deception. Earth needed time. Admiral James Foster, a weathered veteran with steel-gray hair and a reputation for brilliant strategy, led a delegation to meet with Jal. The meeting was broadcast worldwide, showing Foster's seemingly humble approach. "We wish to discuss reasonable terms for humanity's future," Foster said, his head slightly bowed. In his pocket, he carried a family photo showing his wife and children who had died on the Mars colony. His grief was hidden behind a mask of diplomatic caution. Meanwhile, beneath the surface, Earth prepared. Deep underground facilities around the world hummed with activity. In a sprawling complex beneath the Sahara Desert, scientists worked frantically to understand the alien technology from debris collected after the attacks. A team led by Dr. Lisa Wong made the first breakthrough on the 5th day. "Their shield technology works on principles we can understand," she explained to military officials, pointing to complex diagrams. "Different, but not impossible. We can adapt our weapons." In the South Pacific, submarines carried key military leaders and scientists to a network of secret bases built into underwater mountain ranges. These facilities, originally created during past world conflicts, became command centers beyond the Council's detection capabilities. General Hart established what he called the Ghost Network, a communication system using old radio technologies and underwater cables that alien sensors ignored as primitive and irrelevant. Through this network, Earth coordinated its silent resistance. The Council watched Earth's official channels closely. They monitored digital communications, satellite signals, and conventional radio. What they didn't realize was how quickly humans could adapt and improvise. Information traveled by hand-carried messages. Plans were drafted on paper. Training happened in underground bunkers and deep forest camps, shielded from orbital scans. Resources were moved at night, under cloud cover, using routes that avoided predictable patterns. On day 15, President Rivera appeared on global television, looking appropriately defeated. "We have begun the process of accepting Council terms," she announced, her voice carrying just the right amount of resignation. "We ask all citizens to remain calm and cooperative." The message contained a hidden signal through specific word choices and gestures, a code telling resistance forces to accelerate their preparations. That night, 3 alien scouts landing near what they thought was an abandoned military base in Australia were captured. Instead of being publicly declared as prisoners, they were secretly transported to a facility under the Antarctic ice sheet. There, linguists and psychologists worked to extract information while studying alien physiology. From them, Earth learned critical intelligence. The Council's fleet was smaller than it appeared. Many ships were projections designed to intimidate. The actual invasion force consisted of just 7 major warships with limited ground capabilities. They expected no resistance, explained Captain Miller, who led the capture operation. "They didn't bring their full military because they thought we would collapse immediately." By day 20, the first reverse-engineered weapons were tested in abandoned mine shafts. Modified rail guns used principles from alien shield technology to increase their power tenfold. Computer viruses designed to infiltrate alien systems were loaded onto dormant devices. Around the world, civilian volunteers trained for their roles. Farmers learned to hide supplies. Engineers converted everyday factories to produce specialized components. Hospitals prepared secret facilities. Admiral Foster continued meeting with Jal daily, negotiating imaginary surrender terms while gathering intelligence on Council weaknesses. "We need 2 more weeks," he told President Rivera in a secure underground meeting. "They believe we're broken. Let's keep it that way until we're ready." On day 29, Just hours before the Council's deadline, Foster met Joel for what appeared to be final surrender negotiations. "Tomorrow," Foster said with convincing defeat in his voice, "Earth will formally accept Council authority." Behind his diplomatic smile, he knew the truth. Tomorrow would bring something very different. Beyond Neptune's blue glow, in the distant reaches of the solar system, humanity worked in frozen silence. The Kuiper Belt, a region of icy bodies and ancient asteroids, had been ignored by the Council forces. Their scans focused on the inner planets where human civilization flourished. This oversight became Earth's greatest advantage. Captain Elaine Reed stood on the observation deck of what would soon be Earth's flagship, the ENS Vindication. At 42, Reed had lost her entire family during the attack on the Europa research station. Her face, once quick to smile, now held a permanent intensity that inspired both respect and slight fear among her crew. "Status report," she said quietly to the officer beside her. "Stealth systems at 97% efficiency, Captain. The Council's patrol ships passed within 300,000 kilometers yesterday and showed no signs of detecting us." Reed nodded, watching through the reinforced viewport as construction drones swarmed around 5 other massive ships, taking shape in the shelter of a hollowed-out asteroid. The fleet was being built using a combination of materials mined from the belt and components smuggled from Earth through a complex supply chain. Each vessel incorporated technology reverse-engineered from Council debris, but with distinctly human adaptations. Where Council ships were elegant and specialized, these were rugged and versatile. Where alien design followed centuries of traditional military doctrine, Earth's engineers had taken unconventional approaches born of desperate innovation. "Project Eclipse is ready for final testing," announced Chief Engineer Jackson, approaching with a tablet displaying complex schematics. Jackson had been working on experimental stealth technology before the invasion. Now, his concepts had become reality through the integration of alien material properties. "Show me," Reed ordered. Jackson led her to a sealed chamber where technicians surrounded what looked like a curved panel of perfectly black material. "This coating absorbs 99.8% of scanning frequencies used by Council ships," Jackson explained. "The remaining 0.2% is actively countered by these emitters that project false returns. When fully deployed, our ships will appear as nothing more than small debris or natural bodies." Reed ran her hand over the material. It felt strangely warm despite its cold appearance. "And offensive capabilities." A grim smile crossed Jackson's face as he switched the display to weapon schematics. "We've adapted their own shield technology into what we're calling breach torpedoes. They create localized disruptions in energy fields before detonation. Their own shields become weaknesses." Throughout the hidden shipyards, similar scenes played out as humanity prepared its response. Crews trained relentlessly in simulators designed to mimic Council tactics. Each person had been carefully selected, survivors with personal motivation to fight back against the invaders. Lieutenant Mark Davis led combat drills in a cavernous training area carved from the asteroid's interior. Davis had been a civilian pilot before the attack. Now he commanded a squadron of fighters, unlike anything Earth had previously developed. "The Council relies on predictable attack patterns," he explained to his pilots. "Their tactics haven't changed in centuries because they've never needed to adapt. We will use that against them." His fighters practiced maneuvers that would seem chaotic and illogical to conventional military doctrine, but would exploit specific weaknesses in Council formations. In a secure communications room, Intelligence Officer Lena Patel compiled reports from Earth's undercover operatives. Messages smuggled through the Ghost Network provided critical information about Council ship movements and vulnerabilities. "Their main fleet is dividing," she informed Captain Reed. "They're growing complacent, believing Earth is nearly pacified." Reed studied the intelligence with intense focus. "Perfect timing. How many ships remain in our orbit?" 3 major warships and support vessels. The others are responding to some internal Council matter several systems away. Reed nodded slowly. "Then we proceed as planned." Throughout the hidden fleet, final preparations accelerated. Weapons were locked into place. Eclipse stealth systems underwent final calibration. Supply pods were secured. On the eve of the Council's deadline for Earth's surrender, Captain Reed addressed the combined crews of the 6 vessels. 5,000 men and women gathered in the largest assembly area or watched via screens throughout the fleet. Tomorrow, the Council expects to formalize their control over our world, she said, her voice steady and determined. They expect us to bow our heads and accept slavery. They expect us to forget the millions they murdered without warning or mercy. Her eyes swept across the faces before her. Engineers, pilots, soldiers, each with personal losses driving them forward. Instead, we will teach them the cost of underestimating humanity. We will show them what happens when Earth fights back. The response was not cheers or applause, but a heavy silence filled with purpose and resolve. The hidden fleet was ready. The day of Earth's scheduled surrender dawned bright and clear. In New York, Council representatives gathered in the former United Nations building, now serving as their administrative headquarters. High Delegate Giles stood on the balcony overlooking the East River, satisfaction evident in his posture. The humans have shown unexpected wisdom in accepting their place, he remarked to his aide. Prepare the ceremonial protocols for their formal submission. At that exact moment, 2.7 billion miles away, Captain Reed gave a single command: initiate Operation Thunderclap. 6 massive warships emerged from hiding places throughout the Kuiper Belt. Their hulls, coated with Eclipse technology, remained invisible to standard detection systems as they accelerated toward pre-programmed coordinates. Behind them followed smaller strike craft, equally hidden from Council sensors. The Earth fleet didn't head toward their home planet as might be expected. Instead, they split into carefully planned attack groups targeting 7 critical locations throughout the solar system and beyond. Reed's flagship, the Vindication, led the primary assault on the largest Council supply depot positioned in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. This facility served as the central hub for the occupation force, containing fuel, ammunition, and repair facilities. Eclipse Systems Holding, reported Lieutenant Puddle from her station. Council ships show no alert status. Reed nodded, her face illuminated by the blue glow of tactical displays. Weapons status: breach torpedoes armed and locked on primary targets. The Vindication approached to within 100,000 kilometers of the depot before Reed gave her next order: disengage Eclipse. Fire first wave. The human ship suddenly appeared on Council scanners like a ghost materializing from nothing. Before alarm systems could fully activate, 12 breach torpedoes launched from the Vindication's forward base. The torpedoes struck the depot's shields with pinpoint accuracy. Rather than attempting to overpower the energy barriers, they created localized disruptions, holes just large enough for smaller projectiles to pass through. Conventional missiles followed immediately, passing through these temporary gaps and striking the facility's critical systems. Explosions blossomed across the depot. Emergency signals flashed between Council ships as they scrambled to respond to an attack they couldn't comprehend. Their defensive protocols, unchanged for centuries, had never accounted for weapons that could bypass shields in this manner. Council vessels moving to intercept, announced Patel. 3 destroyer-class ships approaching from Mars orbit. Reed's expression remained unchanged, exactly as expected. Deploy fighter screen, pattern Omega. Prepare second wave targeting their propulsion systems. 40 smaller craft launched from the Vindication's hangar base. These fighters didn't engage the approaching Council ships directly. Instead, they executed seemingly random maneuvers that made no sense by conventional military doctrine. The Council destroyers, programmed to counter standard attack formations, struggled to lock weapons on targets that refused to follow predictable patterns. Throughout the solar system, similar scenes unfolded as the other Earth vessels struck their targets with coordinated precision. The ENS Defiance hit a communications relay near Venus, cutting off the Council's primary link to their homeworlds. The EN's retribution destroyed a monitoring station on Pluto that had served as the Council's early warning system. The EN's reckoning targeted a research facility on Ganymede where captured humans had been subjected to biological experiments. Each strike followed the same pattern: appear from nowhere, deploy breach torpedoes to create shield vulnerabilities, then vanish again before effective countermeasures could be mounted. At the ceremony in New York, confusion spread as communications with Orbital Command suddenly failed. High Delegate Jal received urgent messages on his personal device, his composed demeanor cracking as reports flooded in. Admiral Foster, who had been prepared to sign Earth's surrender documents, stood slowly from his seat at the negotiation table. From inside his formal uniform jacket, he removed a small device and placed it on the table. "What is the meaning of this disruption?" demanded Jal, his translator struggling to convey his agitation. Foster activated the device, which projected a holographic image of Captain Reed standing on the Vindication's bridge. "This is Captain Elaine Reed of the Earth Naval Ship Vindication," she stated clearly. "Your supply depot in the asteroid belt has been destroyed. Your communications relay near Venus is disabled. Your ability to call for reinforcements has been eliminated." Reed's eyes narrowed as she delivered the message Earth had waited weeks to send. "This is humanity's answer to your unprovoked attack. This is only the beginning of Earth's response." The transmission ended, leaving stunned silence in the Council chamber as distant explosions became visible in the sky above. While Earth's hidden fleet struck military targets across the solar system, another phase of Protocol Nemesis activated in the shadows of alien worlds. Jack Mason adjusted his appearance one final time in the reflective surface of a transport terminal on Centauri Prime, the bustling commercial hub of Council space. The surgical alterations made him appear as a Veridan merchant, a minor trading species that rarely attracted attention. His skin now had a greenish tint, his eyes were slightly larger, and small ridges ran along his jawline. Mason had arrived 3 weeks earlier, posing as a dealer in rare minerals. In reality, he was one of 63 human agents who had infiltrated key Council worlds before the attack. Each had undergone extensive modification to blend with different alien species, carrying falsified identification that would withstand standard security scans. "Transport 447 to Central Hub now boarding," announced an automated voice in the common trade language. Mason boarded the crowded shuttle, taking the seat near the back. The small device, hidden beneath his fake Veridan skin, contained the most sophisticated virus Earth's programmers had ever created. His destination, the Central Communications Hub, processed and routed nearly 70% of all Council message traffic. Across Council space, other agents moved toward similar targets. On the industrial world Corvus, Agent Diane Roberts accessed a maintenance tunnel leading to a primary defense network node. On Salar, Agent Peter Kim entered a financial center containing records of Council resource allocations and military budgets. All waited for the signal. It came as a simple message sent through commercial channels. "The storm arrives. Lightning strikes." In his shuttle seat, Mason allowed himself a small smile. Earth's fleet had launched its attack. Now Phase 2 would begin. Meanwhile, in New York, the Council delegation was in chaos. High Delegate Jal demanded explanations from his military commanders, who had no answers for how human ships had appeared without warning or how their supposedly impenetrable shields had been bypassed. "Impossible," shouted Commander Vex, the Council's chief military officer. "Their technology was primitive. We destroyed all their advanced capabilities." Admiral Foster sat calmly, watching the aliens' composure disintegrate. After weeks of playing the defeated diplomat, he finally spoke with his true voice. "You measured our technology," he said quietly. "You never measured our determination." As Foster kept the Council representatives distracted with demands for immediate ceasefire negotiations, Mason reached the Central Communications Hub on Centauri Prime. He approached a public terminal used for civilian message transmission, inserted his identification card, and connected his personal device to upload a simple greeting message. The virus immediately spread through the hub systems, burying itself deep in core protocols. Unlike crude human malware, this program had been designed using principles extracted from Council technology itself. It moved like a native process, invisible to security scans. Mason walked away, his part complete. 20 minutes later, the virus activated. Throughout Council space, communication systems suddenly began broadcasting on all frequencies and screens. The message wasn't what anyone expected. There were no threats or demands. Instead, Council citizens saw evidence of their government's unprovoked attack on Earth. They saw footage of destroyed human colonies, civilian casualties, and the Council's ultimatum. The broadcast continued with historical records showing similar Council actions against 7 other developing species over the past century. Planets stripped of resources, populations displaced or enslaved, all hidden from general Council knowledge behind propaganda about voluntary integration. On 12 major worlds, citizens watched in shock as the carefully constructed narrative of their benevolent government collapsed. On Sailor, massive crowds gathered in public squares, demanding explanations. On military worlds, non-Council species serving as auxiliary forces began questioning their commanders. Agent Roberts completed her mission at the Defense Network node on Corvus, uploading a secondary virus that caused minor but noticeable malfunctions in weapons targeting systems across 3 sectors. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to create doubt about military readiness. Agent Kim's financial center infiltration revealed Council records showing massive resource theft from conquered worlds, with profits flowing to elite families on the Council homeworlds. This data appeared simultaneously on financial terminals across the galactic economy. In the Council's diplomatic center on their capital world, urgent messages flooded in from planetary governors and military commanders. Reports of public unrest, communication disruptions, and mysterious system failures created a picture of widespread crisis. The Council's senior director turned to his security chief. How is this possible? How could humans reach our core worlds? The answer came in a message that appeared on his private screen. You thought distance would protect you. You thought technology made you superior. You were wrong on both counts. We are everywhere now. On Earth, President Rivera addressed her people for the first time without fear of Council surveillance. Today, she said, her voice firm with resolve, the galaxy learns that Earth does not surrender. We do not forget, and we are not alone in our resistance to tyranny. 3 days after Operation Thunderclap began, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives from all 12 member species gathered in their grand chamber on Arcturus Prime, the ancient capital world where Council law had been established millennia ago. The mood was far from the usual calm deliberation. Raised voices echoed against the vaulted ceiling as accusations flew between species. Military leaders argued with diplomatic corps. Intelligence directors faced harsh questioning about their failure to predict human capabilities. Silence commanded Grand Arbiter Zol, the eldest Council member. His species, the long-lived Midorians, had led the Council for centuries. This chaos solves nothing. We must address the human threat with unity and strength. At that moment, the chamber's massive display screens activated without command. Security officers rushed to terminals, attempting to regain control of the system, but their efforts proved useless against Earth's infiltration. Admiral Foster appeared on every screen. Behind him stood Captain Reed and President Rivera. "Greetings, Galactic Council," Foster said, his voice steady and cold. "I believe it's time we had an honest conversation." Grand Arbiter Zol rose from his seat. This interruption," Foster cut in, "is the least of your concerns. For 3 days, we have demonstrated what a supposedly primitive species can accomplish when provoked. Now you will listen." President Rivera stepped forward. Unlike her previous appearances where she had pretended submission, she now stood tall with unmistakable authority. "Council members, You attacked our world without provocation. You killed millions of our people. You expected us to surrender our planet and our freedom without resistance. Her eyes narrowed. That was your first mistake. Captain Reed took over, activating a tactical display showing the solar system. Red markers indicated destroyed Council facilities. Blue markers showed Earth fleet positions. Your military presence in our system has been reduced by 60%. Reed stated flatly. Your supply lines are severed. Your communications compromised. But this demonstration was limited by design. The display zoomed out to show nearby star systems, where more blue markers appeared. What you're seeing are additional Earth vessels that have already moved beyond our solar system, Reed explained. Ships you never detected leaving Earth before your attack. Ships now positioned near critical Council infrastructure. Gasps and murmurs spread through the chamber as Council members realized the implications. What they had believed was a localized insurrection now appeared to be something far more threatening. Admiral Foster spoke again. We've identified the home systems of all 12 Council species. We've mapped your major population centers, your key production facilities, your most vulnerable points. With clinical precision, the display highlighted critical targets across Council space, power distribution networks, atmospheric processors, orbital habitats. Your species has forgotten what it means to face an existential threat, Foster continued. You've grown comfortable in your superiority. You believe your technology made you invincible. High Delegate Jull stood, his composure finally breaking. These are bluffs. Humans cannot possibly have such reach. The chamber lights flickered briefly. On every Council member's personal device, classified files from their own secure networks appeared simultaneously. Military plans, personal communications, financial records. Still think we're bluffing? Asked President Rivera. Grand Arbiter Zoll raised his hand for calm. What are your demands, humans? They are simple, Rivera replied. Immediate withdrawal of all Council forces from Earth and our solar system. Full reparations for the damage caused by your unprovoked attack. Recognition of Earth's sovereignty and our right to develop without interference. Foster added, you have 12 hours to begin compliance. After that, we demonstrate that this is not a bluff. 12 hours is impossible, protested a military commander. Our evacuation procedures alone would require. Reed interrupted by activating a final display. It showed a small uninhabited moon orbiting a Council colony world. Without warning, the moon shattered, breaking apart into fragments as some invisible force tore through its core. That was a controlled demonstration of a weapon we call the Planet Breaker, Reed explained calmly. Developed from principles in your own technology, but applied in ways your scientists never considered. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. 12 hours, repeated President Rivera. Your decision will determine whether the Galactic Council has a future or becomes a cautionary tale in galactic history. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. Grand Arbiter Zoll looked at the faces of his fellow Council members and saw something he'd never expected to see there. Fear. In Earth's command center, Foster turned to Rivera. Do you think they believe us? Rivera's expression remained firm. They better, because every word was true. 11 hours and 43 minutes after Earth's ultimatum, the first Council ships began leaving the solar system. Massive warships that had once appeared invincible now retreated under the watchful eyes of Earth's fleet. From the bridge of the Vindication, Captain Reed monitored the exodus with cold satisfaction. Each departing vessel represented vindication for the millions who had died in the initial attack. The last Council diplomatic shuttle is requesting clearance to leave Earth orbit, reported Lieutenant Patel. Reed nodded. Grant permission. Maintain weapons lock until they clear the moon's orbit. On Earth's surface, in what had once again become the United Nations headquarters, President Rivera stood before representatives from every nation. The building still bore damage from the occupation, but the human flags had replaced Council banners. Today marks not just the liberation of our world, Rivera addressed the crowded assembly, but the beginning of humanity's role in galactic politics. The chamber erupted in applause. After weeks of fear and hidden resistance, the victory felt almost unreal to many present. Across the solar system, recovery efforts had already begun. Rescue teams worked to rebuild damaged colonies on Mars. Memorial services honored those lost in the initial attack. Engineers began adapting captured Council technology for peaceful purposes. 3 days later, a different meeting took place on neutral territory, a space station positioned at the edge of the solar system. Admiral Foster led Earth's delegation, facing the Council representatives across a simple table. Grand Arbiter Zoll spoke first. The Council acknowledges that grave errors were made in our approach to Earth. We have complied with your withdrawal demands. Foster's expression remained neutral. Withdrawal is just the first step. We require formal recognition of Earth's sovereign territory, including all planets and bodies in our solar system. And what prevents you from using your demonstrated capabilities against Council worlds? Asked a military representative, tension evident in his voice. The same thing that should have prevented you from attacking us, Foster replied. Mutual respect and the understanding that aggression brings consequences. For 2 days, negotiations continued. The Council, facing unprecedented internal pressure from citizens who had seen the broadcasts about Earth's attack, could no longer maintain its previous position of strength. By the 3rd day, a new agreement took shape. Earth would receive not only recognition of its sovereignty, but also a seat on the Galactic Council itself, the first time in Council history that a species had gained membership without the traditional century of supervised development. The Terran Protectorate will extend from Earth to the Kuiper Belt, stated the final document. No Council vessels may enter this space without explicit permission from Earth authorities. More significant were the broader changes. The Council agreed to new laws prohibiting unprovoked attacks on developing worlds. An independent commission would investigate past Council actions against other species. Reparations would be paid not just to Earth, but to 6 other worlds that had suffered similar treatment. 1 month after the signing, the first official Earth ambassador arrived at the Council capital. Jack Mason, now returned to his human appearance, walked confidently into the Grand Chamber where decisions affecting trillions of lives were made. The people of Earth come seeking neither domination nor revenge. Mason addressed the assembly. We come seeking justice and a balanced relationship with all species. His words were broadcast across Council space, reaching worlds where other subjugated species had begun their own resistance movements, inspired by Earth's example. In mining colonies throughout the galaxy, workers from species long treated as little more than slaves began organizing. On frontier worlds, local governments started questioning Council mandates. The careful balance of power that had maintained Council control for centuries began shifting towards something new. Captain Reed, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, stood with President Rivera at the commissioning of Earth's newest vessel, the ENS Diplomacy. Unlike the warships built for liberation, this ship was designed for exploration and outreach. We built our first fleet in darkness and desperation, Rivera said during the ceremony. We build this one in light and hope. Reed nodded, watching as crew members boarded the sleek vessel. They came expecting to find a primitive world they could easily conquer, she commented. Instead, they awakened something they never anticipated. What's that? Asked Rivera. Reed smiled slightly, the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her since before the attack. A new power in the galaxy, one that remembers what it means to fight for freedom. As the diplomacy lifted off toward distant stars, communications arrived from 3 previously unknown species seeking contact with Earth rather than the Council. The message was clear. The galaxy was changing, and humanity, once dismissed as primitive and insignificant, had become the catalyst. The Council would never make the mistake of underestimating Earth again.